Thank you.
On the air.
Love. What's that?
I said just declare it for the nation.
Oh, yeah. If I'm in a coma of any state
I'm an organ donor
where I'm stooling up myself,
I didn't have to be like that.
where I'm just lifeless, please, whatever plug in the room, pull it.
Yep, pull it.
And if like you feel guilty or whatever, and you think they're gonna
nobody can feel guilty.
Trip over it. Just
I
trip like a
would love
trip.
to trip over that.
Yeah, no, but I want you to pull it directly. Don't be a coward. I want you to pull it.
Yeah, yuck it out.
Because I can pull yours.
Oh no, you ain't got no say. You don't have any say over anything.
Even if you say you ain't, what did I pull it?
You won't have any say over that.
I pull it again by Illinois, and we pull it together.
She don't have no control over that.
Me and Ellie pulling that together.
My mom ain't gonna pull no plug on me.
Trust me.
My mother will keep me
after I sit down
until God
with
decides to take
Illinois
me.
and say, "This woman, let me tell you the hell she is had on me."
And she's gonna
she can say, "You know what? You're right. You know, Fields." Who you want me?
My mom.
And you know what's gonna happen?
My mom can say, "You're right." Let me
yes,
go pull
and
the
let me
plug
tell
on
you
my
something.
child,
By the time I
second
finish
pain
having
and
a
joy.
discussion, by the time I finish having a lovely, calm discussion with Ellie, we could be fighting each other to pull that plug.
Let me tell you something. My mom will cuss you so stink.
Watch this.
You will wish you never showed up on
Watch
her doorstep.
this. You can be there, and me and Ellie fighting to pull the plug.
No. And I could call her on the break.
And I can tell her if you hear Rogan say,
I'm going to call her on the break.
That means pull.
And we'll see what she has to say about it.
Hey, how y'all doing?
My mom will find you.
I can bring a plug to pull, even if none there.
Oh, jeez.
I can tell. I'm going to bring a draw cord. I can plug it in and pull it.
Good luck with that, because she ain't killing her child. My mom loves me, Joe.
And you know what? Oh, by the way, you know that. And if Illy resists me, okay?
What you gonna do?
I'm gonna say, Illy, tell you what. Why don't you go and get us a couple of cups of coffee?
A couple of coffees and
a couple of coffees, and you know I don't even drink coffee.
Oh, and then you
pillow. I get a pillow. I get a pillow, babe.
Why you don't want that.
I wouldn't do that.
No, you even could be in the same room, vicinity, country, probably.
You're not in control of that.
Yeah, so you won't be.
Yeah, I will.
You probably, not probably, you're going to go before me.
Probably.
Like this week.
Yeah, okay. Well, then you're going tomorrow.
Well, you're going tonight. You're going before the show ends.
I can put you right in the eye and take him.
Irma? Boy, but if you die
let me tell you something.
Wow, that'd be something.
This is a confession on the radio now, Candy. If we were in a storm, me and her, and I see the eye pushing her in the eye.
But the eye is
the calmest part. You dumb
so you could get the
but
front
she can't get out. She can't get out the eye.
I want to get on the outer side of the eye.
Then I have the rest of that, what they call that,
the
back side of the eye wall hip.
The dirty side.
Boom!
You can say
it's not very nice.
That's him. He said that.
Rogan, I wouldn't push you in the eye, okay? You push me in the eye?
No.
Okay.
But that's just
we made a truce.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But I'll pull the plug though.
He unplugged the plug.
That's right.
You're such a nut job. Oh, he's making me so sick. I called my mom on the break.
I bring a drop cord, and you know why?
What?
You didn't bring no sush. How you expect me to even respect your
diet?
I'm
sorry. Oh my God. Okay, let me
I expect a slush every day.
I just want to ask you every Monday and Thursday. Oh my God, you're so Tim Petty. He putting this water up on top of his head. I wish I were open. I wish it were open. Because you bring me the water. See, now what I've done?
What are you talking about?
I bring my own water.
Hold on. What are you talking about bringing the water? I'm just putting the water on my head. That's all I'm doing.
Why would you? Hold on. Sorry, let me take this picture of you. Hold on.
I do this when it's hot.
You've never done
Candy.
this. Thank you, Candy.
When it's hot, when it's extra
never
hot,
done this.
I put water on my head. It's very cooling. You know what I'm saying?
Ken? I
do that. You know why I can do this? Because I'm of African descent, and we'll walk miles with water on our head.
And that's balancing
sweetie,
perfectly on your head.
First of all, they go with buckets on their head. Buckets. He has one tiny bottle of water sitting on his dome.
But it fits perfectly on the...
They don't go to the water shop? If I walk, if you're in Sudan, you walk to the convenience shop, okay? You get a bottle of Aquapure water, you put it on your head, you walk back.
That's on video.
Yeah, it is. Oh, let me stop.
That's how you told the water, because you ain't got no pocket. You ain't lying clock.
Yeah. People have buckets.
When you have loincloth, you don't put nothing on your pocket.
You look like a
Anyway, how y'all doing?
Ever since you threatened to pull the plug, I'm not doing so great.
So what, everybody breaking out their phones in the video
What's
now?
wrong with y'all?
What's going on? No, I need those videos.
You set the mood wrong by threatening to pull the plug. That's what.
I'm gonna pull the plug.
Lord. Come massage my shoulder.
What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna push the plug. Push it.
Push it real good. Oh, how was y'all weekend?
It's Monday, y'all.
Yeah.
How was my weekend?
What you did? Oh, you clean your teeth with your tongue? You been eating fishy on mango?
No, I was eating Oreo cookies. My weekend was busy.
Working?
No, I did more leisure.
You were preparing the house?
No, I did leisure.
So what you was busy doing?
I did, aside from none of it being a beeswax, what I did was... Okay,
it's none of my business, but you're going to proceed to tell me what you did.
Yeah, what I did, because of the tone and the attitude.
What?
What you were doing? I played some golf. I went bowling with the child. I played some pool with the child. I went and played golf with the child.
It's not a child.
It's my child.
She's a young woman.
Ask Gilly what she is to her.
Her daughter.
And if you
her daughter.
And if you act in a certain way, see what she'll do. She'll cut your skin. Did you see that video on the Facebooks or the WhatsApps?
No.
This girl, apparently she was 15 years old. This is what I'm saying. Went to the movies apparently with an older man. And her mother must have come into the show and got out with a belt at the mall, at the marathon.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is in Nassau.
And was beaten as she was walking out.
Oh, yeah?
You want me? I can shake me. And the child obviously is abused because the child didn't even flinch. The child was just...
I don't be down with that, though, you know.
No. It was, let me see if I can have it.
I don't support that. I watch this... Oh, it's T.D. Jakes, because I love his Mind, Body, and Soul show that comes on Centric, or one of those stations. And they were talking about parents who publicly embarrass their kids and, like, the fallout from that and, you know, how the kids have to deal with that level of mental and emotional abuse. Like, I'm not against... like beating kids, but I ain't down with that. Oh my God.
Oh no.
Hold on, let me see.
No, man.
Oh my gosh, it stopped.
But do you see that? You notice the child didn't even
but
flinch?
It's like she's
she was smart to just walk out.
Almost up to
she was smart to just walk out and say nothing, because if she had engaged, it would have made it even worse. I hadn't seen that video. Yeah, I don't be down with that.
Anyway, that's what I did on the weekend, and then of course I had some foodstuffs.
Some what?
Foodstuffs.
Foodstuffs?
Food.
Yes, food.
You had some food from where?
Had meals.
Like,
just
did you have anything
foods.
good?
I had some good foodstuffs, I think.
Oh.
You know?
Did
you have any foodstuffs over the weekend?
I did.
I had a Whopps.
No, and I had some good foodstuffs.
Yeah. Did you have?
Because my birthday was last week, sorry.
Yeah, baby.
And so my friends took me out on Friday and then Saturday, so that's the living, man.
You have friends?
I sure do.
Okay.
You have friends?
I didn't say I had friends.
Yeah, good.
I don't have any friends.
You don't have any friends?
No.
You lame.
No, I just don't have any friends. I don't think one has to be lame to not have friends. Maybe one, as you would say, like how you put in the thing, maybe one chooses not to have.
No, you don't choose.
Friends.
You don't choose. You don't choose.
That's
not a choice. It just is.
Someone say you want to be a friend? No. I'm not interested.
That's okay.
That's okay. That's what I like. I don't do friends.
Because nobody will be your friend.
That's what you would say.
That's what you could say.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have a friend.
You had a thing? You went because of your birthday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where did they take you?
I went to Shima one night.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to another restaurant.
You chose not to say?
Restaurant.
Is another hotel? Is that another hotel?
Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to be respectful to you.
You don't have to be respectful.
Okay,
you can
great.
say where you went.
Well, it was at the Swimming Pig.
Okay.
It was excellent.
I've been there.
Great service. Oh, you have? Mm-hmm. You enjoyed?
I did. I went with the child.
Your daughter?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was really good.
Yeah.
So I had a good, y'all like the pate, liver pate?
Yeah, I do.
No.
I love it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I found myself this weekend on Sunday evening. I found myself eating a plate full of entrails.
Okay.
Your livers, your gizzards, your hearts, your kidneys, those, whatever. That type of thing. They were quite delicious.
Yeah.
And I thought, as I was eating them, I thought, this is cannibalistic.
How did we get
to this stage where we eat animal parts?
Love it.
Yeah.
At least they're cooked.
Yeah.
They're cooked.
Yeah, Mahogany House has some nice. Like I never used to be into like liver, period. But they have like these chicken livers with like some apple or something on it. No man candy. You have to taste it. It's really, really good. I could see myself eating that day after day after day after day.
No, you can't. One time I made. Let me tell you why you can't.
No,
One day I decided I like liver. I liked it, so I said to my partner, my wife, I said I'd like to have some. I think I'd like to have some liver. Well, I think they took that to heart, and it seemed like there was like liver every 2 to 3 days. Okay.
Yeah.
After a while, I said, you know what? Let me just make a statement. Let's ease up on the liver. Okay.
No man, I
liver is good though.
I enjoy it.
You don't see liver often.
If it's prepared nicely,
The
not
slab
rubbery.
of liver, you know, like the slab.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like liver, Kendrick?
Yeah.
Kendrick is a liver
Look
man.
at you,
Candy, you don't like liver?
No.
Okay.
What you don't like? The smell?
You don't like liver because
I
you're
don't
a
like how
giver.
it looks.
Yeah.
I don't like how it smells. I just don't. I've tasted it too.
Yeah.
Like a little sliver.
A sliver of
A
liver.
sliver of liver? A liver sliver.
Liver
And I
sliver.
just-
That's a good name
It's
for
just
a
a
thing.
sliver of.
All right, well, listen, we're going to take a break, and then
Already?
we'll be right back
Jeez,
with
time flies.
Candy. Before how you doing, Kendrick?
Yeah, you better be on it.
Before we introduce Candy and don't play the song, I want to say publicly, I'm for Illy no more. Okay?
Tell them why.
Because she betrayed me. I thought better of her.
She didn't betray you. My mom loves me.
No, she. But you know what? You know what the problem is?
You better
And I'm not gonna go forward. Yeah, no. Illy said she wouldn't pull the plug. But let me just say this: Illy was being diplomatic
No, she wasn't.
because the child is in the room,
No.
and she didn't want to, because she'll have to deal with that because this one crazy.
No, listen to
So
me.
imagine if Illy said, yeah, "Of course I'll pull the plug."
No, but what did she say first? She said it depends on how much money at
Money,
stake.
right.
So that be.
But here's the problem.
So if there's plenty of money, she can pull the plug.
Because Illinois, more so than any of us could imagine, knows the nature of this beast over there. And if she had said she can pull the plug, Illy would have had to get witness protection.
My
You know
mom
what I mean?
said she was not pulling the plug. And
WP.
She's not pulling the plug, and she said when God decides to take her daughter, that's when she'll go. And when you said, what if she's messing up herself? She said, well, I'll clean her up.
WP.
What's that?
Witness protection.
I have a good mother, but you go pull your plug. Nobody pulling my plug.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Illy,
go back to your original
wait
rock
till you
flag.
go away. You know how you like to go away?
Yeah.
Me and Illy go on a little dinner. You can settle everything. And when you reach home, all you see is plugs. Okay. Now. So we have the purple one.
She's printing.
Oh my god.
This is more magenta though, eh?
I think it's purple.
Violet, maybe.
No.
Yes, it's.
It's a shade of purple.
No,
okay.
it's not. It's
okay.
reddish.
It's not. It's
Thank
not reddish.
you, because I kind of went for
red.
Yeah, that's
not
red.
It turned out a little bit more violet.
So you went for red.
I went back dark again.
And they went not red. So
Violet.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, trying new stuff, Ed.
Okay, Ray Don Chung.
Mm-hmm. Ray Don Chong.
Hello.
Mm-hmm. What's
I
going on?
missed
Andy?
Rogan last week.
Yes, I
What
might
does that
miss
shirt
you.
say?
What's that?
Nope.
What is that? Oh, nope.
Nope.
Nope for what?
Anything.
Whatever question you ask me today.
Do you want $1 million? Nope.
Nope. Whatever.
Good one.
Well, then
good
it's
one.
You want a
my
yacht?
game
You want
for
to go
the-
on a vacation on my yacht?
Nope. I should, yes. Let me
I
be
think you
more
need to have a little
specific.
plate. And the box say, yep.
Just joking. Just joking. Well, it's really
buy
a
that's the
shirt
thing.
for my children.
Hey, Kendrick, that's what I tell you, boy. If you want to be a young, Playboy, studly type fan, don't be asking women if they want to go out on a date, they want to go to the movies. Just say very casually, so, you want to go in my yacht? Just leave it at that. You're getting a 99% affirmative on that. Hi, Candy. How
And
you
where you
doing?
getting the yacht if you ain't getting the
Nobody
yacht?
just lying.
Oh.
Nobody's lying.
See, you done starting off the relationship
I
wrong.
know, I know.
Hey, let me tell you something though. Is she fine?
Why your voice
Is
change?
fine?
She fine.
Is she fine? And she say yes. You gonna find a yacht.
You can find a yacht.
Oh yeah. Listen,
Even if it ain't, if it
Kendra,
isn't yours.
Kendra, I can borrow a yacht.
He said yacht, not even yacht.
Just a couple of times out of the year.
What's that?
To borrow the yacht.
Well, right now I only waking up one.
No, because then you're going to spoil it and then you should get used.
Yeah, but then you know what? You say, you know what? I gave the yacht up.
Just have a regular boat and just call it yacht.
Yeah. Just go on like the banana boat cruise. All right. Candy, how you doing?
I am well.
You want to continue?
So we're going to bring your Rogan on this.
Well, you don't remember the words?
I was
she wasn't here last week.
Rika was here.
So I'm actually going on a completely different, it's the same topic, but it was what I originally wanted to talk about, that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I had said the original topic last week was, if one day you wake up after years of being in a relationship, X out the
I can tell from that attitude, he must do something.
Yes, I'm refraining from using the word marriage.
Okay.
So you wake up years later in your relationship and you look and you think, did I marry the right person or the wrong person?
You brought up the word marry.
All right, did I partner up with the wrong person?
Uh-huh.
Did I choose to spend my life
this is good.
with the wrong person? And why I said, after years, you wake up and realize this because, day in and day out, things, happen in your life between your partner and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And where I wanted to take that topic was how exactly how much are you responsible for your spouse and your spouse's happiness in that, the daily, yes, you take on your partner's kind of burdens or the load of, financially you build a family and all these things, but in your daily life, how responsible should you be for, making sure you do this or do that and the expectations of picking up, I don't know, I won't use that example.
What?
But, or making sure you do something or, just taking responsibility like you would a child, like making sure your child is their homework. It's like your spouse makes sure, making sure your
boyfriend or girlfriend is your homework?
No, not homework, but take your blood pressure medicine or do this or
that's almost
you're unhappy. I'm taking on that burden of your unhappiness and I'm trying to make you happy. How I think we put so much responsibility on our spouse to kind of take care of us. And so we put these expectations on our spouses thinking that they are just automatically going to do certain things for us. And then when they don't meet that, years down the road, you're like, does my partner even know me? Like, and then you start thinking like, okay, well, because you think certain things just should be automatic, like in your mind, like you should know that I want you to do this, or you should,
I agree.
So that's originally where I wanted to go with that topic, right? And then sometimes years down the road, you wake up and you're like, my partner does not get me.
Maybe you're not compatible. And that's what you realize later on.
Right. And then hold on, Dad. And then that's when I originally said, is that the case? Should we be using that notion that, okay, this is the wrong person for me, especially if, maybe you have not given this kind of intel to your partner that this intel, yes.
The CIA.
Intel.
Yeah.
Just because it's in your head, you got to get it out. It's, about things that you like on a daily basis or whatever it is. And, you just automatically expect your spouse to know that, listen, I want you to, every Friday do this for me.
Mm-hmm.
I drop hints, but you're not picking up. But
that's a problem.
You know what I mean?
That's a problem for me. And I think it exposes just how incompatible some people are. And sometimes you just outgrow people, Yeah. So you might be cool when you first start in a relationship, and then later on, I think, too, a lot of times individuals don't reveal their true selves. And so later on, you can only hide for so long. So later on, you start to show yourself, and then that person isn't willing to deal with it. So, for example, what if I'm a neat freak? We had this situation before. I'm a neat freak, but I kind of hold it back because the guy who I'm interested in is like, I don't want any neat freak. So you say, okay, yeah, I'm going to be this neat freak for him. And then as the relationship goes on, you notice he's a slob. You can't hide anymore that you're a neat freak. And so it's like, oh my God, you're looking at this person, you're not feeling them anymore. I don't know. It just seems like one of those situations where you just perhaps aren't compatible from the jump, but you hide certain things, or you're willing to sacrifice certain things, and then later on it manifests, and you look at that person, you're like, ugh, how did I get involved with this slob, or how did I get involved with this guy or this girl, you know?
Right. And you don't think that's because we put way too much on, we put too much of our I don't want to say happiness. Look at Ed.
Ignore him.
That's
because
why,
you know why I say ignore him?
Around.
Don't look at him because then it's going to throw you off course.
No, I don't want to be off course. I don't want anyone to be off course.
No,
it's a hurricane traveling.
What you what you say in that last point?
Anyway, no. So what I said last week as well was, you have a vision of what your relationship would look like and what you would want it to be, right? And so does your spouse, your partner, right? So, but those visions may not always align, especially if you don't, you might want the fairy tale relationship and, your partner wants a more realistic, this ain't no romantic, nothing going on. Well, I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm just saying I'm saying for me, if that's what happens, then I realize that at this stage that we're not compatible and I don't want to deal with it. That ain't the relationship for me, because as human beings, we're always growing, we're always evolving, and the person who I'm going to be at 55 is not the person who I was at 20. And so sometimes you just got to walk away from certain situations.
Do you ever notice, can I just,
yes.
if you don't mind, do you notice they don't have a grooms? You never notice that?
Why don't you advocate for one?
Yeah.
They have like brides, bridal magazine.
Are you gonna purchase that magazine if it's a groom's magazine?
Grooms.
Did you
modern
look it up?
bride. They don't have a modern groom.
Did you Google it?
I just Googled this. They don't have a
but look for groom.
groom guide.
Why don't you? Yes,
Let
they
me
do.
look
Yes, they
at
do.
Yes.
Let me look that
Yes,
up.
they
Let me
do.
look
Yes,
that up.
look at
Because I can tell you that's one company
Groom
that broke.
magazine.
They broke.
What's that?
But then that's because they probably don't have the market for it.
Let's see. I'm just
If it don't exist, it's because ain't nobody interested in purchasing it.
Oh, you know what they have? They have here. They do have groom.
See?
They have some groom, but most of them are bride and groom. They never take out the bride. Okay? So the reason I brought that up, you're not going to like my answer. You never do, Candy. Is you're right. The question the thing that you put was about the expectations.
Right.
Right? Do we build up these expectations? So it's the cynical side of how we are marketed, etc. Right?
Right.
But the question, and again, I don't want you to dismiss what I'm saying. I'm against relationships because that's
you're
not the
against
case.
Relationships.
Right. So the issue is the expectation. No, because marriage has an implication, right?
Right.
And what you just described, the implication is, and it can happen, fine. But the expectation is forever. I am going to be with this person who I've met 6 months ago, never saw them before. I am only seeing their good side because because in the marketing world, I have to show them the good side because I need to couple with someone, otherwise I'm not normal. Okay? So because I have to couple with someone to be normal, then it's a somewhat forced or pretense or superficial thing. And so, of course, when you wake up with the serial killer, you're freaked out. You didn't know this person.
Exactly.
We probably in this country have a better positioning on relationships because you do know each other.
You do know, yeah.
Because
There's
of
some
family and friends and you see people, right? Imagine if you live in Utah and you run into this guy who live in, down in Maine. And he's just like, oh, yes. He could have then been through about 80. Okay? So I just think you're absolutely correct. It is the expectation, but it's not just the expectation on what you want from this person, but the expectation of what a relationship should be. And that's where it just goes awry to me. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that some don't work out, or that, like you say, you highlight communication is important to work these things out because you have made a commitment to each other.
Right.
But sometimes that ain't enough.
I always equate an adult relationship, right? Think about your relationship with your child, right? You help your child on a daily basis. You make sure you make them responsible and stuff like that. But I mean, that's only sustainable for so long, and until your child gets to a point where they are completely responsible for themselves.
Right.
It don't matter though. It doesn't change. The parents always still feel a level of responsibility.
No, but not on that daily basis. I am here for your advice. I'm here for support and stuff, and whatever it is that you need. But I am here for what's that?
Yeah, some people though that do.
Yes, you do. But for instance, and there are different stages in raising a child, right? I'm not changing your diaper for the rest of your life. Right, I know I have to do that to a certain, point, but then I transition into something different.
Right.
Now it's homework. I have to make sure that you get your homework done, and then now it's your transition. So, but like a relationship, a partnership, you're expected to, okay, I gotta wake up and make this man his whatever it is for the rest of your life.
And he doing the same thing for you though?
What's that?
He's doing something else.
He's doing something else. What I'm saying is...
He's throwing out the trash for the rest of his life, or he's mowing the lawn for the rest of his life, or he's paying the bills for the rest of his life.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is...
He's protecting the family for the rest of his life.
But see me, you take out the garbage, I take out the garbage. You get home first, you cook. I get home first, I cook. I mean, it's not, okay, well, you have clearly defined roles and so forth.
Pork chop again.
Huh?
Let me tell you something. Every day people started eating pork chop because this man always pork chop.
Pork chop.
We gotta take a break. We'll be right back.
Ready?
Okay, we're back. And we're talking to Candy. It's always interesting talking to you, Candy, because I'll tell you why. Let me tell you why.
Why?
And maybe this isn't different from anywhere else, but I have to re-emphasize this more than once. Which is redundant because that's what it means. People are driving home, okay? Now, this is where we do a little kind of a pat on the back thing. You can pat my back, I can pat your back. Because I know there are tons of shows out there where there's a lot of stress when people are listening, and there's, this argumentative thing, and there's, arguing and all that. What we're doing is having a conversation. People are driving home, and I think these are things that people may not want to explore. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? We're not experts. We're just regular, people.
Going through it.
This isn't some psychologist giving some prescription about, but what it is we're talking this because when you're in the room with your spouse or your partner, you're not psychologists either.
No.
And there's no one, you ain't got no money for those psychologists. So you have to find a way to express this stuff. And it's not, there's no punitive thing. Mm-hmm. And and I actually believe that other than the punitive stuff about the divorce, the money, that maybe it doesn't work out. But if it doesn't work out, you should feel that we talk this through. Yes, we have children. We're going to make sure they're taken care of. We talk this through. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But what's more important, that all three, or if you have more children, people are happy apart as opposed to miserable together. Mm. I mean, because that's what people. It's just.
What did you say? Sorry, I missed that last part.
To me, it would seem more important, right? And granted, you want to make that effort to stay together. I'm not decrying that, but it seems to me that it would be more. It's more beneficial to be happy apart
I agree.
than to be miserable and fighting and abuse.
I absolutely agree.
Or
yes, ma'am.
Absolutely agree.
Just why can't people be? And I brought this up with a friend the other day. Why can't people just be responsible for themselves and their own happiness?
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, at the end of the day,
you can still. I can still be with you. Yeah. But don't.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's a toughie.
I mean, that's
you remember that was toughie. You remember that this might have been like last year, and I said, people get into these relationships with all of these heavy expectations, but why, and these are especially for people who are dating and thinking about making that long time commitment. Why can't you find somebody or be with that person and say that I am with you because I want you to be the witness of my life.
Yeah, but you let me just say this to you.
And I'm not
That's a casino.
You.
See, that's like going to a casino and saying to the casino operator, listen, I'm going to throw some dice. I want you to go with it, okay?
It's not.
No. What
How
I'm
is
saying
that?
is, no. What I'm saying is, you want something. You're saying to the person, why can't we be responsible for our own thing? Well, that's maybe nothing that they want. Maybe that's not for them.
Maybe that's why they got into the relationship.
Perfect.
So somebody else
That's
can be
perfect.
responsible.
And so now, guess what? Now that we know that that's not what you're into, but that's what I'm into. Okay, well, you X off the list. Let me move on to the next person.
X. The girl say X.
X. Yes, because then you can imagine those different type of
really
people embarking on that kind of relationship, and then 10 years later, and be like, wow, we're completely not right for each other.
Yep.
And it's like, well, y'all kind of knew that you should have known that from the beginning.
You leave foxes or chili on holiday ice. No, I'm only kidding you.
But you understand, right?
People have to, at the end of the day, and this is what we always conclude
It'll
with.
be easier for you guys.
What we have to conclude with is this. At the end of the day, and this is why, I talk to you about these social contracts and these religiously backed contracts, and kind of moving away from them and dealing with the individuals involved specifically, no one size fits all, and let two people deal with their issues maturely and responsibly, and whatever the result or the outcome is, they live with that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I enjoy doing this with you, because people don't even realize that is an option.
That's an option.
Right.
You're not trapped.
So when we have these kinds of conversations, it opens people's minds to think, okay, well, I don't have to go down that path. Mm-hmm. There is this other path, and I could actually construct a relationship that me and this other person truly would want to have.
You're not trapped, and again, I want to emphasize this. I think that you shouldn't be able to just take the easy path and say, you know what, I for that and move on.
Right.
I think you should communicate. You should talk it through, because at the end of the day, if you talk it through, you don't have regrets, and you can reflect back later on and say, you know what, we tried to and you know what, you might go apart. If you're mature enough, you might grow apart,
and
maybe things you might come back together. You might say, you know what, ain't nothing I'm gonna do like that. Okay, that slip's still open.
Say what?
The boat slip.
I come back home.
Okay.
I coming back.
So that's why I enjoy this. I enjoy doing this show, because it's all about having that discussion. We're gonna have our guest, in fact, is Mr. Lionel Sands, who is the director of education, and we're going to have an earnest conversation about this, these grades and what's going on. And it's very difficult. You can find yourself in positions, whether it's a relationship or a job, etc., where sometimes the things that need to be said can't be said for a variety of reasons. But that doesn't stop us from asking it.
Right.
And so we'll discover what happens. And sometimes, that brutal honesty.
Sometimes you need it.
Maybe the truth
for transformation.
The truth.
Yeah, transformation.
TRUTE.
Thanks, Candy.
Candy.
That was really
good. Candy, I got the thing.
Okay.
I can bring it to you.
All right.
Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Ms. Rogan Smith and Mr. Kendrick Williams. Mm-hmm. And just want to say thank you to Makushla, who's going to buy me a little chow.
Melissa, did she agree to that? She said you would have to.
No.
She said you would have to pay.
Please, I'm asking you not to interrupt me. Once you say on the radio, she's going to buy me some dinner down at the Sheems. That's it. It's a contract. It's a contract. It's a rule. I just made it the rule. She did not agree
to it.
It's a rule. I just made it the rule. It's a radio rule.
Are you the king?
Yes, of this show. Yes, and Makush cool with me like that. Hi, Ellie.
Makush.
Okay.
You're so silly.
On a more serious note, but we like to, as folks are riding along, we like to lighten it up a little bit, and so that they can get in the mood to, just be relaxed. Nothing's tense.
You ain't got to be tense.
And we can talk about things. And one of the things that are happening now, other than of course Irma. Is and I'm sure our guest has got to deal with that.
Is your house battened up? Are you battening up?
He got. You know how much house he have? How much schools in the Bahamas?
170.
How much?
170.
You have 170 house. You're talking about his house?
I'm talking about his personal house.
You have 170 houses to deal with.
He got to deal with.
Yeah, we have Mr. Lionel Sands, who is the director of education, and I'm going to say this. I don't know how this is going to come off, but when we think to do shows on education, and it sounds sad in a way, Mr. Sands, we have to say, who do we talk to? And actually, there's a very kind of small cadre of individuals we can talk to. So, of course, your name pops up into mind right away. So thank you for coming.
Yes.
You're welcome, sir.
Mr. Sands, let's get to the brass tacks, as they say. I don't know where that comes from, but let's get to brass tacks. And I'm going to ask a question that hopefully we can get that edge off, and then we can move to the more substantive stuff. Tell me why, Mr. Sands, that every single teacher in the public education system should not literally be on probation with regard to grades, staying pending the grades of next year. We have a problem. And the only reason I'm asking, because obviously, we don't have to go through the cliche thing of that there are good teachers in the system, et cetera, et cetera. But there's an issue of accountability here. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking that if Kendrick Williams came to this show every day, and every day he didn't turn on the mic every day.
Always an issue.
Okay, that it would only be a matter of time before Mr. Williams would not be on the show. Mm-hmm. And so, we can't be cowardice about this anymore. There has to be a level of accountability that says, how is it that this particular group of children that you're responsible for cannot cut the grade? Now, maybe there's a rationalization, and that's what I'll ask you if that's not too much of a loaded question.
No, it isn't, I think we confuse success in schools by determining that the number of grades, good grades or bad grades, actually is the only indicator to success. Let me give an example of that. 25 years ago, 1993, I think it was, when we started the BGCSE examinations, we did so, and the majority of the people in the ministry, nor the majority of the public, knew what was the intent and the purpose of the BGCSE examination. And so everybody thought that the results of the BGCSE examination determines the success of students. Now, I need to go back to the history so that you could understand exactly where I'm coming from. Prior to 1993, most of us, and you would be a part of that, we actually sat the GC examinations. Mm-hmm. You know that. Mm-hmm. But what you didn't know, and what most people didn't know, was that the GCE examination was designed to actually identify those top 15 to 20% of the students in all schools in the UK and its territories who were at a point where they could transition easily into academic colleges. That was the intent. 15 to 20% of the students. And the statistics that we have from 1954 to 1992 shows that in any given year, prior to 1993, the total number of students who actually sat the GC examination was about 500 in the entire country in the Bahamas, out of a total population of 4,500 grade 12 students. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that within that 500 that actually was allowed to do the GC examination, we got 25% of that 500 who actually passed the GCE examination, so that the indication was that those were the elite students who were able to go into the colleges. In 1991, actually, London called the Bahamas and said, listen, by 1993, we will end the GC examination. You now need to get an examination that would do for you what GC did for all of us. Mm-hmm. And so they said to us, now that you are getting your own examination, you need also to include those students who are not a part of the elite. to be examined. Okay? And they said to us, for those 70%, between 70 to 78% of students who would not have done the GC examination, we have an examination that would give you some information on those 70 to 78% of the students. It's called a CSE examination.
I remember those.
Which was the for technical vocational students. And so they said to us, if you combine the GCE with the CSE, you can get a BGCSE examination that would give you information on the 15 to 20% who would go into the college, and information on the 70 to 78% who will not go into college but who would be directed into the technical vocational area. We didn't do a very good job of explaining to the country that that is what the exam was intended to do. And so everybody, the 100% of the students who sat, was now being examined on the 15 to 20% exam for those students who were designed to go into the colleges. And so obviously the results would be skewed in terms of...
Here's by the way,
I appreciate that because I've never heard that.
No, and I can accept that explanation because I went through GCE, and I know that in those years, I don't want to use the word, a group of people who were able to meet certain academic standards. Right. You don't need to call them elite. They met certain standards, took GC exams, while the other kids took CSE and they focused on vocation, etc. But here's the problem. If you go to, because whatever measurement you have and whatever argument you have, it has to be consistent across the board. So then I need to understand why, say, at a private school, that the rate of passing is higher. Okay, they're not, in fact, they're taking the BGCSE in grade 11. And probably 85% of the people are passing it. Now, chances are
some of them are sitting advanced, like sitting APs, those
etc.,
those papers where
AP. Now, I don't know, and you can tell me, Mr. Sands, if with the percentage of people in the private school to take in BGCSE, I get the feeling it's a high percentage. But let's just go from there. Now, there's another element. Forget about the BGCSE. You're right. I'm not taking the GRE and the GMAT, and only people who want to go to graduate school take those things, or the SAT. But this is what I do know. You need to be able to read. Okay? You need to be able to do math. I don't care what the measurement is. I don't care if it's a Z. But then you have to say, when I hold up the paper and say, can you please read this? You go, I have a Z and D, but let me read this for you. First, the applicant had a duty to bring to the attention of the court.
Right.
Okay? What I feel, and maybe this is wrong, that no matter what the grade is, okay? Now, I spoke to a school to be unnamed. There were 200 students in the school.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? 40%, if I'm doing my math right, because I didn't do too good in math either. 90 had leaving certificates. 10, not 10%, 10, so that's 5%, had a B or more, with the highest being a 3.3.
Wow.
The remainder, which I assume would be, 50% or so, had the rest. And you can, so I'm not concerned about academic prowess, Mr. Sands. I'm concerned about
what basic capabilities do.
Because you know what, we did a thing, an apprentice program where we partnered with the BTVI, and it didn't work out. Yeah. And you know why it didn't work out? You have to be able to read the manual.
Right.
Wow.
You have to be able to read the manual. So tell me then, how do we then transition to the understanding? Because if we now understand that means we're not programming this thing right.
Okay. I call it preparing students for school and not school for students. That's what I call it.
Okay.
What we've been doing in the last 40 years, actually -3, we've been actually preparing schools for students. In other words, you come to my school, you're going to take what I give you. And so the program is designed for the school and not necessarily for the students. In 1994, and again, a bit of history. In 1994, we recognized that there was a problem with what we were doing in schools in terms of trying to determine whether students are successful based on examination results because of the type of what I explained to you about the examination, BGCSE and GC and all of those. And so the question was, what then do we use? How do we measure success in schools? And for 22 years, we've been arguing among ourselves, educators that is, arguing among ourselves which would have been the best instrument to determine that. And so from when Ivy Dumont was minister, we determined that perhaps what we need to do is to do a high school diploma program in all of our schools rather than just focusing on the BGCSE, which would be the icing on the cake. And so we couldn't get agreement amongst educators. I wouldn't even talk about amongst the general population, because if educators couldn't agree on that instrument, obviously nobody else.
Why were they content to continue an instrument where there was failing?
Because most people at the time came out of that system, that elitist system, and they were content to be a part of the elite because John Q shouldn't be a part of the elite because you're John Q. That was the mindset, that was the attitude. And that attitude still prevails to a certain extent today. But the point I'm making is we understood that we needed another instrument to measure the success of students. And that instrument is actually the National High School Diploma. Now, we couldn't get agreement with educators. We couldn't get agreement with governments because governments had to be given the assurance by educators that this was the best way to go. And if we couldn't agree, you couldn't convince the government. And so in 2011, from 1994, in 2011, the government finally consented after we did some studies in Finland, in Singapore, in Canada, in all of the top countries that are doing well in education. And we recognized that it wasn't the exam result, it was exactly what we were talking about, is a program that is designed for the students who are going into our schools. And so we came up in 2011 with the high school diploma program. The high school diploma program requires every student to meet a certain level in terms of criteria for the program, which would include not only academics, by the way. In fact, I have it listed here. Not only academics, but it talks about the responsibility of the students, how he relates to his peers, how he relates to teachers and administrators, and how he relates to community and those kinds of things. All of these are part and parcel with getting this high school diploma at the end of grade 12. However, in 2011, we should have started. We didn't get started. 2012 happened, and the government changed. And when the government changed, the new minister decided that maybe that was something he should pursue. And he did so in earnest. And so he decided, you know what? Since you've been away a long time ago to come to this point, let me take you all the way again to see if that was still the reality. And so we went away again. And we came back recognizing it's still the reality.
Well, of course it's the reality.
Yeah, I know it is the
reality.
reality.
You knew that, yeah.
Yes.
But let me ask you this, Rogan. I'm going to, for purpose of this show, I'm going to buy into your argument, okay? Because one of the things I would equate that to is sports. Let me give you an example. This country is basketball, track and field, dominant, okay? Swimming, some other little fringe like soccer and all that. But the reality is, there are many kids who can't do any of those. But they may be able to do archery. They may be able to do chess or judo or whatever the deal is. There's a range. And when you grab a child, okay, who is not able to run fast or jump high or whatever, and they all of a sudden discover archery or rifle marksmanship or something that grabs them, they excel. Okay? That's what you're saying, I assume, with regard to the academic program. That we've got this list of things, and if you don't fit in there, then it don't work. So what you're saying is we have to expand ourselves. I get that. But I am now going to judge you on one thing. Because you know what? No matter which one of those sports you do, you got to be able to stand up.
Okay.
So you have to be able to read. Okay? You have to be able to do some math. Why are we failing in those? Because we don't hear when they do these results, Rogan, do they do other Obi has English and math, right? That's what we hear.
No.
But I mean, generally that's the two that they go. They got a D in math and a D.
Because I guess it's a
okay.
D6.
They're the largest
So
subject.
I only want to worry about that because in order to function, you have to be able to read, you have to be able to write, and you have to be able to do some math. Why are we failing in that?
When you look at the high school diploma program that we actually started in 2014, we had the first graduation exercise in June of this year, 2017. And so all of our statistics now should be comparing what happened in June 2017 with June 2018 and so on. But the point I'm trying to make here is this. Before you get to the point where you graduate, there are some things that you have to do. And the things that you're talking about, that students can't read and they can't do math, all of those are compulsory components within the high school diploma program. And so we have...
They're compulsory now?
They're compulsory in terms of... I'm talking about now, yes, from 2014.
Okay.
And so, because 2014 is when we started this new high school diploma program.
Okay.
And so we have what we call compulsory programs, and then we have what we call... electives for all students. And so a student who desires to pursue, and we also consider the aptitude and the career interest of students, which is preparing students for school. How do we do that? We provide every 10th grade student with a career interest inventory, which of course is an exam you don't need to study for, because all it does is it shows you your inclination toward your career in the future, your responses. And so each student is given a career interest inventory. That career interest inventory is then pooled by the ministry and sent to the various schools for the students who are entering the different schools to say to them, now you have to devise programs based on the inclination, the career inclination of the students, and along with their aptitudes. And so they have their compulsory subjects, the math and the English and the science and the social science and an art subject and a technical vocational subject. That's the basic that everybody must do, whether you are inclined to or not.
But then it's tailored for you based on what your interests are.
And then the elective is what we focus the study on.
But why? I get it, and I support it 100%. We talked about Candy. You were on the show when Candy was talking about, the thing about how she would like to see her child educated in terms of interest and not just graded on academics. I get all of that. I still need our audience is forced would knock me across the head if I cannot get the answer on why is it though that if it was compulsory then. And it's compulsory now to learn how to read. We are not learning how to read.
Okay. Here again, we started the program, the high school diploma program, in 2014. That was for grade 10 students.
Right.
But part and parcel with that grade 10 program was also the program where we reduced in primary school the offerings that we were giving primary school students, and we focused on the math and the reading and the science, and then we did interdisciplinary subjects where you could take 5 subjects and you could teach 5 subjects in one subject because you could use the content.
Right.
And so we reduced the subjects that were offered, and we increased those areas that were critical to us, and that's the reading and of course the numeracy, the math. Now the results from those, it's only 3 years later. Because what I'm saying is, in grade 3, in 2014, those students will now be in grade 6. So we just got started in 2014.
Okay. And how you have measurements?
Yes, we do. We do have measurements to see how the students are performing in those areas that you're talking about, the numeracy and the literacy and all of that. And so those students who are in grade 3 in 2014 are in grade 6. And those students who are in grade 6 in 2014 are now in grade 9. And so the programs that we developed for the primary school to make sure that the foundation is built in terms of the reading and the numeracy and all of that, you won't see the end of that for those students until they reach grade 12. And so the point I'm making is...
When you get to primary school, grade what?
6.
Grade 6. So the people who are coming out, do you have a measurement now that says the people who are coming out of grade 6 last year, which means they would have been in there since 2014?
Yeah.
Have you seen a jump, an uptick in the literacy level and the numeracy level for kids going from grade 6 to grade 7?
Uptick, but not as significant as I would like it to be, yes. And so, simply because...
So what's the deal?
Here's a challenge that we face in most of our primary schools, particularly in New Providence and particularly in Grand Bahama. The numbers are large. And so when you're looking at teaching a class of 38 students who are challenged with reading, with a teacher, and that's the reason why we have this program where we're putting teachers' aid and assistants in the class along with the teachers, so that it would make the job and the work of the teachers much easier, so that they can have a one-to-one relationship with the student. Because in many instances we need that. And in addition to that, what we're doing to build all this capacity amongst our students, we're trying to ensure that many of the students coming into our public schools at grade 1, this would be the first time they're actually coming into schools. And so we are now expanding the schools into our preschool so that we could get this. And so these things only started 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And so we won't really see the results for the next few years. And so the point I'm making is, yes, we failed to do what we should have done up to 2014.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah. What percentage of students would you estimate graduated this year not knowing how to read?
Not knowing how to read?
Yes.
I would have to look at the statistics. I do know that 51% of the students graduated either with minimum or beyond minimum requirements. Mm-hmm. And there were about 48% who did not meet the graduation because of one or two criteria that they didn't meet. And so I would need to examine the statistics to see which of those students could not read or were not reading at grade level. We call them, we say that students ought to be reading on grade level. So if you're in grade 5, you should be reading at grade 5 standard. Mm-hmm. But we're not satisfied with grade level reading. Mm-hmm. We expect students to read 2 grades above their level. Mm-hmm. And so if you're in grade 5, we expect you to be reading at grade 7 level. Mm-hmm. And so I would have to look at the statistics to see how many of our students fall in a category. And the same is true with the students who graduated.
Do we have a case of is there a possibility that some of the students who are passing out, even though we had a poor national grade average, that they performed well in school but they're just poor test takers? Is that a possibility?
Yes. See, when you look at the
outlier though, right?
Yeah. But see, when you look at the examination result, that is what is telling you. The BGCSE is telling you that. It doesn't mean that those students were not successful in going through the courses.
Right.
Right. Because not only they may be poor test takers, but they may be entered into a course that was not really their inclination. We have students who if you were to put these students in the courses that they really want to pursue, for example,
mechanics,
carpentry and joinery,
right.
mechanics,
yeah,
these would be all your A students. They may not necessarily get the A in your English and your math, but the way the courses are designed nowadays, for high school diploma, we're providing students. If you, for example, in auto mechanics, we're providing you with the math that would suit the level that you're moving into in terms of auto mechanics. The same is true.
When I was a high school student, right, I told them, I said, why do I need to know algebra just to go to the food store?
Exactly. Yeah. So my point is, so they're taking the English and the math courses that are consistent with their inclination and, of course, their career interest. And so if you're going into a career that requires of you to work with machines. So what kind of communication skill that you need to have? And so that's the communication skill that we're teaching you at. Those who are going into the college to do academic studies, they would do college English in high school. Those who are not going to college, they would do workplace English if they're going directly into the workplace. Those who are not going into the workplace but are going into what we call apprenticeship program, they would be doing apprenticeship English and apprenticeship math. That started in 2014. And so that's the thing that's not making the students fearful of school any longer, because they know that all I need is the English that would take me through to my career, but I need that elective that's critical to me in terms of my career. And so that's why I said at the beginning, we are creating students for school and not school for students. And so students are no longer dropping out.
Do we have to take a break? Because I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
We do? Okay. When we come back, I'll ask my question.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, along with Rogan Smith, the wonderful, my friend. How you doing, Rogie?
You pulled the plug on me a few minutes ago.
Rogie,
now
you know I would only plug out of you. I would only pull the plug from you because of my love.
To let me die.
Excuse me. Because of my love and compassion for you. That's it.
Along with
I'd pull the plug on Ken. Don't worry about that. You know that. And I'd pull the plug on Brother Sands. I'm a plugger. I'm a plug puller. Okay? Now, let me say this to you, Mr. Sands, because I cannot exhaust this subject long enough, because the people who are driving and listening at the moment, they need this reassurance. Okay? Now, let me be as diplomatic as possible. Although I wish I could go off the deep end, you can continue to be diplomatic. But you see, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to Mr. Sands. And what I hear is something that is cause for intrigue. And as I said to you, I didn't wish to be offensive because I'm not trying to be offensive. That I'm listening to an educator
who sounds educated,
who speaks properly, who enunciates properly, and blah, blah, blah. And I feel that our system is rife with persons
who are not that.
People who are principals who are not that. Okay? Now, I'm not going to ask you, because that's not even possible for you to do. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. But I'm going to say this. We had a scenario where in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where we would go out to the world and we would say, come to the Bahamas and invest. And we had some, I don't know if they used to call it bullet point then, Rogan, some things. See, I'm going bilingual. Okay? And it said, come to the Bahamas because these are the things we have. We have close proximity. Oh, sorry, first. We have the oldest parliamentary democracy. We have close proximity to the United States. We have high literacy, telecommunications, and some other things. Okay? Now, what happened? Something had to happen. And the question I'm saying, if we, see, it isn't like you've gone from zero literacy and we try to get to somewhere. We were there. Something happened. What happened?
Mr. Fields, I am of the view any teacher or school administrator who does not speak standard English at all times is a very lazy person, because it's easier to go back into the dialect and speak the language and be able to communicate with the students. But the intent of every teacher is to lift students up, because all of you don't have to teach dialect. That's something that's natural.
Yeah.
But to lift them beyond the dialect to the standard so that they would be able to communicate with everybody else, not only in the Bahamas but elsewhere. And so I find that if you find that there are teachers who are still doing those kinds of things, or administrators, they're very lazy, because it takes discipline.
But do they not realize the impact they're having?
Maybe they don't know better.
Maybe they don't. But the point is, you have to understand, as a teacher, you're impacting your students for life, and you have to impact them in such a way that whether it's their speech, their deportment, and you can only do that by you doing the very same thing that you are trying to impact them with. For example, if you're trying to impact them with your speech, then your speech itself has to be such that it impacts the students. And so if you're not doing it, then the students refuse to do it.
Are we in a situation, though, where the ministry is in such dire need of teachers that it's willing to lower its standard just to bring somebody into the fold to teach our kids? Because we don't have the luxury of saying, this person is a poor speaker, this person doesn't seem like they'd be a good teacher, but guess what? We need somebody to teach these kids, so let's just bring them in.
I do know we're hard-pressed to find the specialist teachers that we need. Very hard-pressed, simply because we are competing with other countries for the very same teachers that we need.
Was that the math and science teachers?
Math, science, English language also is a part of that. And so because we're competing, then we have to settle for what it is that we're able to get. And so what we try to do to circumvent those kinds of issues is we provide professional development for teachers throughout the year.
Mandatory?
Mandatory, but even with the mandatory, we don't get the teachers that we need, because the teachers who actually show up are the ones who we really don't need to show up.
No.
But how is it mandatory?
Mandatory in the sense that the teachers who show up, they earn credit hours.
Yeah, and they get rewarded for that.
They're rewarded, and so if I don't care about credit hours, I won't show up. That's the point.
But I'm saying if I'm a teacher and you've identified deficiencies in me, I should be in that scenario.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't have the opportunity to say, nah, I don't need the credit hours or I don't need whatever. I should be made to do it.
We do that. We do that where we make them attend because it's a time when they should be in the class. And so once they're in the class and we ask them to come out, they come to the sessions. But the more impactful professional development exercises would be like during the summer holidays when the time is there.
Right.
And so obviously teachers want to avail themselves to that.
I saw this happening, Mr. Sands, in 1979. Okay? I was at a continuing education course at St. Augustine's. And I was in a class of about 30 teachers who obviously they were there, 95% of them were there to get these extra credits. Right. But here's the deal. They were eating cane in class. Peeling, this is 1979, peeling and eating cane. Now, I know you're an educator, and I know you come from a background where if you were caught chewing gum as a student in class, it's a big problem. So I'm only 19 now when I'm in this course, and I'm seeing teachers peeling and eating cane in class, and I'm thinking to myself, we're doomed. That's what I thought.
1979.
1979. Wow. Now, let me ask you a question, sir. And this is something that I'm putting to you because I want you to see how this nation cares and needs to be concerned. It's our fault. And it's our fault because we didn't have the foresight at the time because of a lot of other social pressures to be like countries like Finland and Canada and all these other countries. Because here's what we did wrong. For whatever reason, we decided, and unfortunately we have folks like you who managed to forego what I'm about to say. We decided to value lawyers. We decided to value doctors. We decided to value accountants. And as a result, quote unquote, the value that we put on those professions, the brightest and the best went into those professions. See, academically, let's not dispel the fact that you could be the brightest and best carpenter or the brightest and best mechanic. Yes. But the teachers, the educator base, right, went into those professions. Had we valued teachers and paid them $60,000, $70,000 a year, we would have attracted people to go into that profession. Now, there are other professions that I think should be in there, like policemen and nurses, etc. But the bottom line is that our economy, our life, our future does not rely heavily on policemen and nurses. Our healthcare does, our safety does. I got it. But our being relies on educated people. How do we find a way to make some kind of sacrifice somewhere so that we value teachers and start paying teachers a certain level, and those who meet a criteria? You see, because if you were paying teachers $60,000, $75,000 a year, and I don't want to undervalue Rogan Smith, but chances are maybe Rogan Smith would have been a teacher, or Ed Fields would have been a teacher. Okay? And so we need to get to the point of valuing teachers and say, okay, you can get that, but you got to have this.
Yep.
And all those who don't need it, sorry, you can't do that. You can't be in that.
Yeah.
And to the point when that person comes to interview with Mr. Sands, and they say, well, I know what I'm doing, or I just want to be one teacher. You go, well, I'm sorry, but this, I don't, thank you for coming.
Yeah, there's a standard.
We don't. Thank you. Thank you. No, you don't even need to say what they did wrong. Just
in your head, you know.
Just say thank you. I thank you very much for applying.
They never hear from you again.
We'll write back to you.
Don't call us. We'll call you.
No, we'll write back to you. and you'll get a letter. Thank you for coming.
That was our experience when we went to Finland.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In Finland,
You can get into
Finland,
medical school.
You can get into medical school easier than you can get into teaching.
Yeah, sorry, we get back.
And so you can't. Right now we take in students teachers who come in with their bachelor's degree, and teacher training. But that's not sufficient in Finland.
No.
They require a master's degree
and doctorates.
Yeah.
And they're paid.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to get into their system of education if you're not highly trained.
And this is at the elementary level and secondary?
All level.
Are you kidding?
Level.
So you can't come again.
Okay. And so the point I'm making is...
You can't come.
I qualify.
No. The point I'm making is many of our teachers today, if they were to go to Finland, would not be able to get in simply because they've not met.
They might even get to go to Finland.
And so now you ask the question: How do we get to that? And it has to. We have
to do it.
Take a considered effort by the Ministry of Education and the government to determine. You know what? If we are to lift.
Yeah, I can give you an idea. It might take 14 years, but it seems like you're a stickability man. Okay. Because you said, you worked on that diploma.
Yeah,
you say you was working on that diploma. You only got one more year. No,
they can extend because they can't lose you.
Yeah.
If you want.
Let me explain what the idea is, Mr. Sands. We have to, over time, it's going to take a long time. For next year, pick 3 schools. And say, you know what? We're going to find our brightest and best teachers, and we're going to put them in these 3 schools. Okay? And we're going to pay these teachers this. And the rest of y'all, because we're going to keep moving. And if y'all want to get to where these are, then you need to up your game or get out of the game.
Excuse me, you mean pulling all the bright teachers from those schools?
Listen, we cannot continue.
But what happens with the kids are left with mediocre teachers?
There's mediocrity across the board right now.
No, but you have bright teachers in those environments who
but they're languishing. I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Sands now.
No,
they're languishing.
But the kids are going to languish even more with Mr. Fields.
Well, then we start. Listen, we got to come up with something.
No, I like your idea, but you can't pull all the good teachers from that.
We'll tweak it.
You got to tweak it. It ain't going to work like that.
But we have to. You can't. We got to say, listen. No, but see, listen. There's a teacher. Mr. Sands knows who it is. Mr. Sands knows that there's a teacher. He can tell me the name off the air. That he is the best teacher in the system. He knows who the person is. He does. He knows, and that person should be. First of all, that person probably went and got their master's or PhD.
Really?
Okay. Oh yeah, you know who it is.
I'm looking at him. He's saying yes.
You gotta tell me that in the public school system, there's not a doctor, someone.
Absolutely.
Of course. So they have it. They speak well. They perform well. They show up to those classes, those extra classes.
I would like to interview that teacher.
Okay.
On the show.
He knows who they are.
He can tell us who it is.
And they need to be rewarded above Mr. and Mrs. Mediocrity.
Here's one of the things that the current minister and I spoke about recently, how we're going to reward those teachers for the work that they do above and beyond everybody else. And we need to consider that and make sure that they're not only rewarded in terms of the monetary reward, but also everybody would know who they are.
They gotta know.
And so we talked about, you know what about taking that kind of teacher? We always take the picture of the athlete and put them at the airport. Mm-hmm. Take that teacher and put them on the airport wall so that everybody know that this person has that sort of impact in the country. And those are some of the things that we're thinking about. Because we're beginning now to understand that without that.
Because otherwise, by the way, you know when I say what happened? I'm now going to give you the answer. This is how I roll, Brother Sands. Yeah. You know what happened? Those teachers, behaving teachers I'm talking about, who were in the system, unlike the Mr. Sandses who stuck it out, otherwise we'd be doomed. They're lawyers and accountants.
I know.
They left. That's why. They left. They were languishing. I could name you 20 right now. Yeah. You know, if I name them, you'll go, they was a teacher? They were teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they left. They became lawyers and accountants and other professionals.
We had a high attrition rate, teachers going to other professions. Even when I was in my time, And
what was your time?
71,
Yeah.
72, 73.
It was before my time.
Stop talking foolishness on this radio. What's the requirement?
I got to make sure I even our boy because he has to come back. You can't brutalize and then you got to go pain and pleasure. You know what I mean?
What's the requirement? Because you talked about how some of the teachers, the majority of the teachers in Finland have like masters or PhDs.
Yeah.
What's the requirement here to be a teacher in the public school system?
A bachelor's degree in education
only.
But you telling me all these people now have because
every single one.
You can't have a bachelor's degree in math or English.
Even PE.
Those are the ones we want.
If they have those bachelors, they could enter the profession.
If you have it in math and English, but you still have to have a diploma in teaching.
Yeah, teaching.
How you get that? You go to the College of Bahamas?
How do you do that?
Bahamas. Yeah.
How long did that take?
About a year.
I probably can't do that.
There's a teacher in me somewhere.
There's a teacher in all of us. But you know what's also of all of us? We want to have let's face it, we're people, we're selfish. We want to have a decent living.
Yeah,
so
that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Dedication is only cuts. When you go to the food store, dedication ain't on the note.
Yeah.
I dedicated. Okay, we'll get a discount 20%. No, listen, Mr. Sands. I mean, we're not making light of this. This is very serious stuff, and we need seismic change because we can't keep on doing that. I took a tour. I don't know if you recall this. You remember when I was with Mr. Fitzgerald and we were looking at the sports fields and all that? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, man, I took a tour of those schools. I felt poorly. I felt we were really doing our children a disservice.
One of the problems we have with our schools is that these are very old plants.
Physical plants. Remember what Jeff said? Some of them need to be
so when you walk in there as a student,
feel less than.
I don't want to be here.
Yeah, when you walk in there as a teacher.
They've done experiments, They took a school in London, and I know we have to go, and it was just miserable. And they changed it into a wonderful space with atriums, and the grades just shot up. Mm-hmm. They want to be there. Yeah. The school should be an oasis for children to want to go to. What you laughing at?
No, sorry.
Absolutely.
She's out of her mind. All right, Mr. Sands?
Yes, sir.
Listen, may I call you Brother Sands?
You can do that.
Okay. I'm Brother Fields. Okay?
Brother Fields.
Listen, man, I'd like to have you on again. This is a safe space, man.
This
is a safe space.
No objection.
And we just want, because all we want to do is try to get...
And just talk.
Just talk and just, be
candid.
Be candid and also just help people understand.
Absolutely.
And I thank you for your explanation and your candid position on things.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Brother Sands.
You're welcome.
Brother Sands.
Yes, sister.
I don't need Brother Williams, thank you for coming by. And Sister Smith.
Brother Smith. Everybody's brother.
Sister Smith.
See you Thursday.
It's always a pleasure. We'll see you. Our guest on Thursday will be the Honorable Glennis Hannah Martin, a schoolmate of mine. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about her run for leadership of the Progressive Liberal Party. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Be safe out there. Listen, I don't know what's happening, but be prepared. If this one don't come, something else coming. Be prepared.
Bye.